Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Hello and welcome to Books to Screen, the series where I invite bookish guests to join me for deep dives into my favourite topic, adaptations. This is the first episode in this series, and joining me today is long-time guest of the pod, often co-host of our Patreon episodes, best pal of mine, and of course the amazing author, let it be known, it's Emma Hinds.
Hello, here to talk about history.
Exactly. Today we are diving into one of the most anticipated movies of 2026 and arguably one of the most anticipated adaptations, which is Chloe Zhao's film adaptation of Maggie O'Farrell's 2020 novel Hamnet, which is starring Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley. The novel Hamlet was, as I said, published in 2020 by Tinder Press in the UK and by Knopf in the US. It is a historical fiction novel about the death of William Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway's son, Hamnet. Hamnet died at the age of 11 in 1596, and this novel explores the life of this family before, during, and after his death, and how they navigate grief and loss. It was reported that by 2024, this novel had exceeded 2 million copies sold and had been translated into 40 languages. The film adaptation was released earlier this month in the UK and has already been nominated for several awards and has won the Golden Globe for Best Picture. Before we dive in though, Emma, are you ready for some quick fire questions on adaptations?
I feel like I'm at school, but I'm as ready as I'll ever be,
You've got this, I
which is
believe in
not
you.
very ready.
What is your favourite adaptation?
I think my favorite adaptation is the BBC War and Peace.
Wow!
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
I was thinking you'd go for like Wolf Hall or like Pride and Prejudice or something like
I
that.
do love those things. I do love both of those things. And the BBC Wolf Hall is incredible, but I really love the BBC War and Peace. And I think I love it because it sort of I tried to read War and Peace and I got really stuck. And
Mm.
then I tried again after watching the adaptation, and it was so much easier. And it just really like helped me do it. And I think that's the point, is like if an adaptation is good, it gets a person into the book, right?
Mm.
That's the point. It's not a substitute. It helps you get it helps two pieces of culture work together to like make this one thing. So yeah, I love it.
This
And
is
it's
very true.
brilliantly cast. James Norton is amazing as Andre. He breaks my heart every time.
James Norton.
Yeah. I think it even
Okay.
has Jessie Buckley in it, which is
Stop.
ironic. Yeah, I think it does have Jessie Buckley in it.
Oh, I'm kind of sold on that now. I never thought I'd watch that, but here we
It's
are.
great. It's great. Like you think like, oh, I'm not gonna love it, and then you sit down and they're like it's high society Russia, and they're swanning around. Lily James is like swanning around in her beautiful dress, and then suddenly it's like war, and everybody's being blown to pieces,
Oh my
and
God.
it's just like it's such high drama and so good. And there's yeah, and there's an affair
Look,
or as close to an affair.
you know how
Yeah,
to
there are
sell it to
affairs.
me.
There are two affairs.
Great, I'm sold.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was gonna ask you, do you read before you watch? But then you've just kind of come up with a really great argument for why it might sometimes be beneficial to watch before you read.
Yeah, I like to read before I watch, but I think the point of adaptation, hopefully, is that it moves people towards the material.
Mm,
And sometimes you can watch a movie without realizing that it's an adaptation, or you can watch a
this is
TV
true.
show without realizing it's adaptation, and then you move back. So, for instance, like All of Us Strangers, which we loved,
Hmm.
is an adaptation of a novel that is actually very different from All of Us Strangers, but it took me to the material anyway. So yeah, I love
Yes,
that.
I still need to read that book. What is your favorite character casting?
Okay, this is like a person who's perfectly cast, right? That's what this Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn in Lord of the Rings for all time. But also, yeah, no, I'm sticking with it. Oh, it's
Sticking
hard
with
though. Oh, t but Timothy Dalton as Mr. Rochester in the BBC Jane Eyre from like the 90s is peak. So that's a battle that I'm just going to have in my head. But those are pretty high on my list of perfectly cast characters.
And I know that we could also bring up Greta Gerwig's Little Women, which we both love.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Timothy Chalamet.
Such a good casting.
Such a good casting. That's
Chef's
yeah,
kiss.
it's a chef's kiss casting,
This is not.
to be
This was a
sure.
terrible idea to get us to do this because it's not going to be quick fire. An adaptation you would love to see happen.
Oh my
And I'm going
God.
to put it out there right now that any producers, directors, anybody listening to this, The Knowing by Emma Hinds would be so good on screen,
Yeah.
and it needs to happen. And please
I
cast me.
mean, that would be great.
Yeah,
I would love that.
I would love
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am a big, oh, this is so hard.
I'm sorry.
But I'm just gonna go with like, I think something like Piranesi would be really fun.
Yes, and it's
By Susanna
happening.
Clark. Okay, well,
It's happening.
I feel like I should choose something that like people aren't doing.
No, this is only like this news came out like within the last fortnight.
Oh, okay. Well,
So
I'm so on the
you're
nose.
ahead of it, you know.
Yeah. Aside from that, my friend Nat Reeve writes the funniest, silliest, queerest, most trans Victorian detective romps. And I just feel like we're in our Enola Holmes era as a society anyway, and
This needs to happen.
Nat's work is essentially his work is like Enola Holmes, but much more
Mm.
trans. And I think that would just be like I can just imagine it like Early Fate and Nettleback being like a perfect TV series.
It would
So
be so fun. But
it would be
also,
so fun.
David from Serenity Booksellers has
Would
been
lose his mind.
begging for a musical of Nat's
That would
books.
also be cool. That would
Yeah.
also be cool. Yeah,
Frequently posts tagging, is it Cypher Press?
Cypher Press. Yes, it
Saying
is
this
Cypher
needs
Press.
to.
Nat Reeve, Cypher Press. If you have been watching Enola Holmes and being like, why are there just not more gay characters and trans characters in this? Then that's where you need to be.
Yeah, 100%. An upcoming adaptation that you're excited for. I know which one you're not excited
Yeah,
for.
okay. So I know H is for Hawk is coming out,
I think it's out now.
and oh, is it out now?
I think it's just come out.
And that is one where like I am actually quite excited because I never got into the book
Mm,
and I haven't read it and I really haven't been that interested in it. But I really like Claire Foy as a performer
mm.
and I like the work that she does. So I think I think I will watch it and then read it probably.
We did see the trailer
Um,
for this, didn't
we
we? And
did,
it looked
yeah.
excellent.
I am excited for the Odyssey. I am excited for the
Yes.
Odyssey. Oh my God. Sorry. No. If like and the I will put this on my adaptation and like I know this is a segue, but like if someone can adapt the Song of Achilles, please,
Oh my God,
for
yes.
like mega feels. I will die. I was like
I've
obsessed
still
with
not read
Troy
it.
as a kid. Have you not?
No,
Oh,
I need to.
heartbreak.
And you're
So
like,
good.
you're not the first friend that has said that it's incredible, and a few of my friends have said you need to read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that needs to
Well,
happen.
maybe a movie will come out.
Maybe.
Yeah.
An adaptation you hated.
I had one in my mind. Okay, I'm just gonna I hated the most recent Persuasion,
Yes, I remember you telling me this.
uh with the fourth wall Fleabag breaking thing. That wasn't the one for me. Other adaptions that I've hated. Oh, I had a really good one there. Where's it gone? It's like all the adaptions that have ever existed have just fallen out of my head.
Yeah, it's
And I
understandable.
can't
That's
never to be
okay.
seen again.
That's okay. You're digging me well.
Maybe it will come back to me.
Well, I was going to ask you an author you think would be great at writing for film and TV, but you've just kind of given a very good pitch for Nat Reeve.
Yeah, I think there are some very naturally cinematic writers, but like people who I'm sure will end up writing already do kind of blur the edges and will end up being some of them writing amazing screenplays of their own work or other people's work. Julia Armfield will, Lucy
Yes.
Rose will.
Yeah.
I think Brandon Taylor probably will.
Mm.
AJ West wrote The Betrayals of Thomas True. I feel like that's coming. I think that's only a matter of time. In terms of people whose work I read, and I'm like, I think this is already very cinematic and I don't know whether that means that they would be a great screenwriter because I do think it's a different skill. But I like A.K. Blakemore, who wrote The Manning Tree Witches.
Yeah.
I think they have a very cinematic kind of visual landscape. And yeah, Sarah Perry as well, I think. Although I never saw the Essex Serpent adaptation, so I don't know like if it was actually any good or not. It
I've
had
heard
Claire
good
Danes in
things.
it and Tom Hiddleston, so I mean it should be good. Why haven't I watched it? What's wrong with me?
Maybe that can be another one you come on for.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into what you came to talk about, which is Hamnet. I have been so eager to talk about this, and I hadn't read the book yet, so I'm really glad that this has got me to read the book. I did read the book before watching the film. Thankfully, I managed to squeeze it in, and I loved the book so much. I was so mad at myself that I hadn't read it before. When did you first come across it?
I haven't read a lot of Maggie O'Farrell, and I bought this in a charity shop probably like not that long ago. It's been since we lived in this house, so within the last 5 years, which is strange because you'd think for me that as soon
Mhm.
as it hit the market, I would be right there. But yeah, it just didn't kind of, I think for a long time I didn't necessarily realize what it was about.
Yeah, that's okay. You're
And
not going to know
I
what
think
every book is
yeah,
about.
I think also before I was really in publishing, I
Hmm.
wasn't a person who was very interested in publishing.
Mm,
Like I was very interested in writing, the craft of writing, but not very interested in the publishing world. Like I would
yeah,
read what I want to read. I would go
yeah.
to the library and pull out books that I wanted to read, but
Hmm.
like that interests me. But I also wasn't really online in an online space. So I think I just seen it and been like, oh, that's a weird word. That's a weird word for a book. And then, picked it up in a charity shop one day and was like, hang on, it's about Shakespeare. It means Hamlet. Oh,
I
so
love that. So you said you've not read anything else by Maggie O'Farrell, or you've not
I
read
don't
much by
think so,
her.
but I've not checked her bio, so I don't know what I've read. Let me have a look.
The Marriage Portrait was a more recent one.
No, I've not. I've not.
I have read, I think it's called The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox. That was
Yes.
the first one I'd read, and I absolutely loved that. And I think for anybody that loves reading a sister dynamic, that is a book to get on your list. It's a
Mm,
really, really good one. And it was just like a really unexpected favorite.
mm.
I think the cover as well, I just wasn't expecting it to be my cup of tea. And then yeah, I fell in love with her writing. As a historical fiction expert,
Lol.
out of the two of us, you definitely are,
Yeah.
but I mean, you know your historical fiction, so I think I'm making a fair point. Anyway, I'm not going to argue with you on that. But why do you think this works so well as historical fiction?
Oh, so I think for me, something that really gets me excited about historical fiction, and I've talked about it a little bit in the past, I think, is either examining a moment in history that hasn't necessarily been examined in a particular
Hmm.
light before, or looking at a moment in history where you can clearly see the seeds of something being planted that then produced something later on.
Yeah.
In this case, the death of Shakespeare's son
Hmm.
Hamlet produces one of the greatest pieces of literature of
Yeah.
all time, Hamlet the play.
Hmm.
And that is just, as a historical fiction writer, that is so much fun to
Yeah.
be in like a moment, to take yourself back in time to a moment of history and kind of give it flesh and ask yourself what's actually happening in this moment beyond the bare fact of, and in 1596 his son died of plague. Like
Yes.
what does that create in their household? And I can see why it was just such a juicy moment for
Mm.
her. That's what my agent Alice always calls things juicy when we talk about historical fiction. And that's how it feels, is
Yeah.
like that a historical moment is so ripe for the picking,
Yeah.
and it hasn't necessarily been examined too greatly or in too much detail. And
Hmm.
I can see that she looked at it and went, oh, I'm going to talk about his wife. I'm going to build that house
Yeah.
brick by brick, timber by timber. I'm going to make my reader live in it with
Yeah.
this family, and then I'm going to wrench this death into it and see what it produces. And I think that's it's really clever. And yeah, that's why it works. We
I
want to know as well, like
Yeah, and we know so much about Shakespeare. There's so much more information available to us about him than there is about his family. And I think it's just really magical the way that she's sort of expanded on the what could be of his family. I really love that she never names him. She never names him as Will or as Shakespeare in the book. In the film, they name him once. From what I can remember, they name him once, but in the book, they don't name him at all. He's just referred to as
yeah,
the tailor's boy. Is it the tailor's boy? The glover's boy? The
the husband,
the
the
husband, the
father.
father, it's all those kind of, references to him. And I think that's so cleverly done.
Yeah,
And
and it's so delicious because it's all the ways that we don't know him.
Yes, yeah, so
And
true.
as a historical figure, we can never know him as
Hmm.
father, son, brother, Glover's boy. You know, we can't know those things about him. We know him as his name
Yeah,
and his title. But I also think something that she feeds really nicely into the book, which is a fact about this historical time period, is that names were a lot looser.
yeah,
So, you know, in the book, her name is written as Agnes.
yes.
In the movie, they pronounce it Annius.
And yes, yeah,
In historically, she's known as Anne. The child who dies is Hamnet, but Hamnet is also a Hamlet.
yeah.
Like,
It was
and
interchangeable then, wasn't it?
and yeah, and we also know historically that William Shakespeare signed his names lots of different ways.
Hmm.
And so sometimes it's Shakespeare, Shakespeare, like it's slightly different, but it just speaks to how communication was different at the time.
Yeah,
And one of the bits I love that she puts in the book is when the letter finally arrives telling him that Judith is ill,
yes,
the boy in the place where they're performing calls out an approximation of his name. And that's sort of how it was in those times, is people
yes.
spelt things differently and you just assumed that if it sounded like your name, it probably was your name. And it also speaks to the different levels of status and the changing, the way that printing was changing the world as
Hmm.
well. Because before this point, printing hadn't been part of the universe. Everybody handwrote things differently. So yeah, I love that. All of those decisions speak
Mm.
to something about the historical time period, which is always something that's going to get me excited.
I also, another thing that I think she's great at is I always use this word and I don't know if it's the right word to use, but I'm going to use it anyway. I think she's so good at inhabiting the mind of a child. Is that the kind of word you would use, or is there a
Yeah,
better writer
yeah.
term for it?
I would use the word inhabiting. I think that's
Yeah.
a great word. Yeah.
And I just think she's so skilled at that, and his sort of observations on the world around him and his kind of curiosity about the world around him, and not quite understanding certain things. And there's a moment when in the book that isn't used in the film where when he first realizes Judith's ill and he runs to the, I don't know what word he uses for like the doctor's house.
It might be the physician.
Physician, I think it
Physician was
is.
quite a common word.
I
Yeah.
think it will be that. He runs to the physician's house and he has this whole experience of like trying to get in, and then I don't know if it's the physician's assistant or his wife or whatever, but won't let him in the house. And it's all his kind of confusion and his, how frantic he is. And it's just such an innocence to it that I think is quite hard to maybe get right. And I think it's really hard as well when you get older to kind of remember what it's like being a child and how you might perceive certain situations and how you might respond to certain situations. And I just think the kind of how afraid he would have been, she portrays that really well.
I think she does a beautiful job of a child
Yeah.
narrator. And I think it's very brave as well it's a difficult thing to do to narrate a character all the way up to their experience of their own death.
Yes.
Because at some point you are slipping the bounds of what people are either going to find believable or not
Hmm.
in terms of self-knowledge. Does somebody know when they're dying?
Yeah.
How do they experience it? Nobody can tell us that. And so the imaginative journey that she takes this little boy on is I find it very convincing.
Hmm.
It is perhaps like the one thing you could say about it is it's a little bit gentle in terms of it's a very interesting choice, but there is like a gentleness to it in the way that she narrates Hamlet's death from his own perspective,
Hmm.
this sense of him being in a snowy landscape and lying down in the snow
Yeah.
and getting weary. Whereas his mother's narration and the narration of the situation is that he is in tremendous pain
Yeah.
and is in tremendous suffering.
Hmm.
And I think she gives her readers a little bit of softness
Yeah.
in that choice, which
Yeah.
is that no matter what Agnes Annius is experiencing, the reader knows that from Hamlet's own perspective, he has lied down in the snow and has experienced the softness. And that's very sweet and very tender. I wonder if there was a harsher version, if there was a version where she didn't write that. I just wonder. Just
Of
because
course you are going to say that.
I just wonder because it's an interesting choice
Yeah.
to have those two experiences contrasting. So
Yeah.
I do wonder if an editor came along and was like, God, this is awful. Can you just lighten it? Just
Yeah.
like a smidge. Can you make us feel that he's not suffering.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting in terms of an adaptation choice is like Hamlet's death in the book is so sad,
Yeah.
but it is carried so tenderly
Yeah.
with the language,
Mm-hmm.
right? The way his last breath is described, all of that is carried so tenderly.
Yeah.
And that is a real comfort to the reader.
Yeah.
In the adaptation, none of that tenderness is there. It is
Oh,
it is brutal. It is
yeah.
brutal. And you have the scene that is described in the book very well of
Yeah.
like how the different characters are reacting
Mm-hmm.
to his mother really fighting for his life.
Yeah.
But you also don't have that choice of like the softer scene. So
Yeah.
of the and they do show the internal of Hamlet because they show him kind of like we talked about, you described it as like beyond the veil, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
idea of him kind of on a stage, but he's sad,
Yeah.
and they do have a little bit of a moment of him kind of maybe making a choice to go on, but it doesn't have that same softness that it does in the book. And I thought that
No.
was really, really interesting that in the adaptation they were kind of like, nah, we're just gonna make it appalling to
I mean,
visually experience.
we're on the subject of his death now, so we may as well deep dive into that. I mean, I think you pronounce it Jacoby Jupe as Hamnet. I think he is an incredible actor, and I think
Yeah.
he is going to go on and have a wonderful career. I think he portrays that character beautifully. And one of the hardest parts of the book to read is him taking Judith's place.
Yes, that's harder to read than his death
Yeah,
from his perspective, which is
yes,
interesting.
definitely. And him saying that we're gonna, saying that he can see death in the corner. And I did think, how are they going to translate that to screen? And I think that was a sort of tricky thing for them to translate. I think in
Yeah.
the film, he only kind of does this glance into the corner, and it probably out of all of it, that was the one thing that didn't really work for me on screen.
Yeah, it was direct to camera as well. It was
Yeah,
like we were deaf, the viewer were deaf watching.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. But I do think him taking her place is genuinely like one of the most devastating things I've read. It's really hard to read, and I think that part was harder to read than it was to watch. But then his death is so harrowing on screen, and it's his mum. I mean, in the book, she's obviously so frantic and she's having all these internal thoughts of how could, and I think she even says it to, Will's mum as well, like how can I have been tricked? I've been so focused on Judith, and I always thought she was the one I'd lose, and that's made me, that's distracted me from the real problem, which is Hamnet, and she's so frantic with it, but. On screen, I think Jessie Buckley does an absolutely masterful performance of that sort of frantic energy you would have. And she's got the pestle and, is it pestle and mortar? Is that what you call it?
Yes,
I
pestle
always
and
think I've
mortar.
got that the wrong way around. But pestle and mortar, and she's frantically with these herbs and, rubbing things on him. And she's like, nothing's working. And the sounds that are coming out of her are just like, you really feel like, as anxious as she does. And then when he actually dies, I mean, you do have this moment where Susanna, his older sister, has this sort of scream at her that I couldn't remember if this happens in the book.
It doesn't. In the book, Susanna thinks it.
Okay.
And she's like turned to the wall and she's got like her
She is.
fists pressed into her head
Yes.
and
And it's
she's thinking it.
beautiful.
Yeah,
And it
but
is a
she
beautiful,
doesn't
yeah.
say it.
But I do understand that there is certain things that they need to show. They need to show us that, we can't have all of those internal thoughts on screen. So I do understand, but I do think that moment in the book is really beautiful of her with her head on her fists.
Mm.
But on screen, she screams at her and says, leave him alone, like, it's not going to work, or like, let him go, or whatever she says.
Yeah, can't you see it's too late?
Can't you see it's too late? You've got such a good memory.
I reread it this morning. Let's be clear. I reread that
Of
moment
course
this
you
morning.
did.
So it's like,
Can't you see it's too late?
yeah.
And then when he goes, there was this moment of complete silence. And I mean, I don't know what it was like for other people in the cinema, but in our cinema screen, it was like pure silence as well.
Except for us going,
Sobbing. can't do this. And yeah, pure silence. And then Jessie Buckley just kind of lets out this sound from the depths of her soul. And I just think it is one of the most powerful performances I've ever seen, like genuinely.
I think it is Jessie Buckley's movie.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I think I'm
She's
not
coming for
gonna
that
sh
Oscar.
yeah, I'm not gonna shit on your boy. I think he was fine, but I
She
think
didn't
it's
say
her movie.
fine.
Like he was good,
Put
but
some
like
respect on
it's
Paul Mescal, please.
okay. He for the time that he was on the screen, he was lovely, but it's her movie.
Fair. And he does
Yeah.
there's even a clip that I've seen of part of their press tour where he's holding Jessie Buckley and he's saying in years to come drama school students will be studying this performance. And
Yeah.
I do think he's right. I think she captures that grief so unbelievably well, and
Mm.
that moment will never leave me. I just think it's so sad. There is a thing around Hamlet's death that I want to speak about, and it's when Will realizes it's Hamnet that's died is different in the book to in the film, which of course things are going to be different. But Anya's saying that she will remember the sound that Will makes even in old age, and also him being the one to carry Hamnet through the streets
Mm.
to be buried, I think is also one of the hardest things to read and is so
Yes,
beautifully
but
written.
I missed the funeral. I didn't miss it at the time because we both went into this movie in slightly different states. So you had read it quite
Yes,
recently
yeah,
and were watching the movie. I had read it a long time ago and was
yeah,
watching the movie. So for me, the movie was kind of like had a lot of grace. I didn't have like the memory of the book kind of imprinted
yeah,
very freshly. So I didn't know what I was missing
yeah.
necessarily at the time. I didn't feel like things were missing so much. So I really was kind of watching it as a piece on its own and sort of
Mm,
assessing it, how it held up to like the historicity of the time and how it was expressing those things
yeah.
and how it held up narratively as a whole piece
Hmm.
rather than necessarily thinking too much about what might be missing from the book,
Hmm.
which I think is a cool thing to be able to bring now, that perspective. But then after we watched, I reread, and one of the things I missed was I think you really missed that moment of him carrying his son and then
Yeah.
his brother coming to help him. I
Yes.
really missed the moment of her, which I can see very clearly, of her like at the end of the funeral gripping the post
Yes.
on
I've
the
written
edge of
that
the
down.
churchyard
Yeah.
and not wanting to leave
Not wanting to
because
leave.
while she's still holding the post, she still has three children.
Yes.
And if she leaves the churchyard, then she'll have left a child behind in the churchyard and she can't leave him. So she's holding onto the post so she
Yeah.
doesn't have to leave and they pull her away. And
Yeah.
I think that was such a visually compelling moment.
Hmm.
I'm surprised it didn't make it in,
Me
but
too.
when I examined it fully, I realized that like the impact of that moment is really based on the train of her thoughts,
Yeah.
that feeling of I can't go from having three. When she enters the churchyard she has
Mm.
three children, and when she leaves it she will have two, and she can't make that transition.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would. I can imagine that maybe they shot it but maybe it
Mm.
didn't have the same impact just visually on the screen because you can't bring that unless you narrated it or had her speak it aloud. It doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah, I did miss that, and I did, like you said, I missed him carrying, insisting on carrying his son to
Yeah.
be buried, and then his brother joining him. I was really moved by that. I felt in the film that him, when he realizes it's Hamnet that's died, and him going
Mm.
to him and sitting with him, I personally felt that. I know we cried so much already in this film, but I did feel that that moment was cut too short. We moved on too quickly. I feel like we needed to sit with him and that realization that he's lost his boy. He says it like, my
Yeah.
boy. I feel like we needed to wait with that for a few more beats. I felt like we were pulled away too quickly, but I don't know if it's because we spend so long with Jessie Buckley and her emotions, and then when he comes in, it's like, oh, maybe we've been with
Mm.
this too long now. But yeah, that was for me. I wanted to see
Yeah.
his reaction a little bit longer, but I don't know what that says about me.
It's a very moving moment, isn't it, when he
Mhm.
comes home?
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
know in the
and
book
his
he sees Judith, he gets excited that she's okay, and then he sees Agnes and he sees Susanna, and he's like, "There's one
mm,
missing." He like goes around the room and like counts the people, and then he's like, "Something's still wrong," and then he realizes it's Hamlet. That's in the book, but I just think in the film we kind of left it too quickly.
yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I really appreciated the speech by her mother-in-law, which
Mm.
is kind of verbatim taken from the book
Hmm.
about not taking children for granted. And in the book, it's her internal thoughts when she knows that she believes that Judith is going to die, and
Yeah.
she's thinking about her own children who she's
Hmm.
buried, all plague deaths, and about how children are so precious.
Yeah.
And it was a really moving moment in the movie.
Yeah.
And I appreciated them taking what was kind of like a little bit of an aside. Like, it was lovely, but it wasn't as important in the text, and giving it this whole moment that really informed her character,
Hmm.
because she's an interesting character in the film, I think,
Yeah.
as the mother of the playwright of the nation, I
Hmm.
guess. In terms of her timeline, we see her as this kind of a little bit henpecked woman with
Yeah.
this abusive husband.
Hmm.
She clearly loves her children. Then we see her very against Agnes when Agnes is pregnant with his baby, and wanting to get rid of her and not wanting her to be married to him. And so we develop this as a viewer, we develop this feeling that she is not a kind or compassionate woman.
Mm.
And it's a little bit reinforced because she refuses to let Annius go into the woods to bear her second children, who turn out to be twins, even though she's doing this out of tremendous belief of keeping the children safe. And I don't think it is this way in the book, but in the movie, they make the point that the river has flooded and therefore it'd be unsafe for Agnes to go and deliver the child how she wants to, which I think kind of takes away from some of the rage that Agnes feels in the book.
Yeah.
But she is very, very tender, and gets Agnes through the birth of her twins.
That performance from Emily Watson is
Yeah, it's
beautiful
really
in the labour
strong.
scene. Yeah. When she's
But
holding her and
yeah,
you can see how emotional she's feeling.
but it's a performance that really culminates in this monologue
Yeah.
about losing children
Yeah.
and losing babies,
Hmm.
that is delivered so powerfully and simply. It's very candlelit, it's direct to camera. She's sitting at the table. There's this profound sense of overwhelming grief inside of her,
Hmm.
and yet she delivers it kind of very calmly. And I thought that was a really beautiful use of the source material. It took a
Hmm.
moment that was maybe a little bit on the side in the
Yeah.
book and really brought it out and created this really beautiful character in
Mm.
that moment. I think if they hadn't had that moment, I don't know if I would have loved that character
Fair.
in the movie as much.
I also don't know if his father's abuse was as believable on screen. Not believable, but it didn't feel as intense on screen as it did in the book for me.
Yeah.
In the book, I found it to be really overwhelming, and I found the moment when Will puts him up against the wall and says, like, you'll never hit me again, or that's the last time you'll ever hit me, or something
Mm,
like along those lines. I found that to be so powerful in the book. And it
mm.
was powerful on screen, but I felt like there was less of a build up to it. And I don't know if it's just because you've got less time on
I
screen
think
than you
it's
do.
time, but also it's
Yeah.
that internal space,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, you just, it's very difficult to portray those internal feelings
Yes. Yeah.
that he experiences, the kind of like humiliation,
Mhm.
particularly that he feels
Yeah.
from his father, and how that rift is so present in his life.
But they don't have in the film adaptation they have this moment in the book where Agnes watches there's like I don't know if it's like a meal time or something, and there's some sort of movement or something that's said, and without there being the physical action or like something serious happening, and just gains this understanding of, oh, this is what's going on in this family, or this is what's happening in this
Mm.
house. She suddenly, she doesn't see the abuse for herself, but something happens that makes her aware of that's what's happened to Will. And I found that a really powerful moment, but I don't think she sees it in the film.
No, she has like a sense of, she believes that both her and her brother feel that the house is quiet. And I
Yeah.
think the comment on the quiet house is meant to kind of bring with it the connotations of like, it's a house that's quiet because it's keeping its mouth shut. It doesn't, everyone inside it is walking on eggshells around this man.
Yeah.
But something I loved in the book that we didn't get in the movie, and I can see why, because it's kind of a castaway moment, is like after Hamnet has died and his father goes out just on an errand, and he's so overwhelmed by the children and the presence of them out in the streets, and he bumps into his own father
Yeah.
in the passageway, and it's like 2 lines long, and it's basically highlighting that his father says nothing to him about his son's death, has nothing to say to him. And I think it's a great little line. And I could see it so clearly when I read it on the page.
Hmm.
And I think that would have kind of given a little bit more of a bookend to their relationship in the movie.
Yeah.
Because in their relationship in the movie is like he's abusive and Will puts up with it. He's
Hmm.
abusive and Will stands up to him.
Hmm.
Will is worried about his son in working for his father, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And I do feel like that moment would have kind of like, I don't know, given us a little bit of a bookend to his relationship with his father,
Yeah. I mean,
narratively.
we do come into the film a lot further on in the story than in the book, because in the book we see so much of their childhood and what, Agnes's life was like with her mum, what that their dynamic was like, how sort of quirky her upbringing was. And it was especially quirky in like those times, I don't think it's mentioned that she was perceived as a witch, but there was definitely a sort of a kind of people were wary of her and maybe distrustful of her, and there was a different way that she brought up her children than maybe Will was brought up, in lots of different ways. But
Yeah.
yet we don't see as much of that side of things. I think we immediately come into it when Agnes is older and she's in the forest and
Hmm.
he's tutoring her brothers, and we don't even see why he's tutoring her brothers. It's just we jump to that point and it's kind of their meeting not long after. So I don't know, did you feel that we'd lost anything by not seeing their upbringing?
No, I don't think so. I think because they had flashbacks
Mm,
for Anius's mother. They
yeah,
didn't do flashbacks for his family, but
yeah,
because we had flashbacks with Anius's mother, I don't think we lost. I think we had all the information that we needed.
yeah. And
And
you
if we
can
had
see from the
spent,
way, sorry,
yeah,
you can see from the
uh,
way she is
yeah,
what her mother might have been like.
yeah. I think this is where, like, for me, it potentially fell down as an adaptation, but it's a really complicated thing. So I'm going to try and put words to it in the best way I can. What was presented visually on the screen
Hmm.
was a very kind of like heavy lean on like what we currently perceive as things associated with paganism. So the interest in herbal remedies,
Hmm.
plant knowledge,
Yeah.
respect for nature, believing in kind of nature as a space in which surprising things can happen,
Hmm.
foresight and foreknowledge that Annius is able to gain from touching people or being in people's presence. Those ingredients in the movie read visually as a very clear witchcraft narrative.
Hmm.
And when we came out of the movie theater, I was kind of like, I don't remember it being this heavy on the witchcraft thing.
Yeah.
And I was rereading and I was like, it's not as heavy on the witchcraft thing
Hmm.
because of a very important, like Marigny O'Farrell does a very good job in Hamnet of presenting the diversity of thought and experience that was happening in the 1590s,
Hmm.
particularly. So this is pre-witch trials,
Yeah.
which come in hard in the 1600s with King James, the
Hmm.
publication of the Discovery of Witches, which is a
See, this is where
manual
your
which is,
historical knowledge
yeah.
comes in.
But this is not to say that witchcraft wasn't something that was punishable by death, because it was. The laws around witchcraft in those times were that in order to be put to death for being a witch
Hmm.
in the 1590s-ish, you would need to produce witchcraft that killed another person or a pig, a
Oh,
piece of livestock,
right.
valuable livestock. Like, it's a bit ironic, but like if you did witchcraft that killed a dog,
Hmm.
people honestly would probably not give a shit because dogs weren't worth anything. But like a pig, something that a family might rely on, that would be a big deal. This doesn't take away from the fact that somebody could accuse you of witchcraft and you could be tried locally and you might be put in a ducking stool, or you might be murdered for it
Hmm.
according to the law. But what we also have to take into account is that like the way we think about medicine today and the way we think about religion today is hugely influenced by the scientific revolution of the 19th century, and also by the division that developed between spirituality and science, really not until in a very hard way until the like 1840s, 1850s. It's
Mm.
a long time in the future. So what I'm trying to get at is that we see in this book on the page, there's a church burial.
Yeah.
People are crossing themselves at his death, at the moment of his death. There is a sense of like the idea of foreknowledge and things like that, of using herbs. That was like everybody was using herbs,
Yeah.
those kind of things. That because that's all there was,
Mm-hmm.
to be clear. So this idea of like her tying herbs onto his buboes to like heal him,
Yeah.
visually on screen, we look at that and we're like, witchcraft, right?
Yeah.
Because we've been taught to associate those things with those things.
Yeah.
But at that time, that's all there was. There wasn't another cure for the plague.
Okay.
Even in the 1600s, they were so when we were researching the boundary, do you remember we were talking, we would like the
Can you
different
give
things that
context to
people.
the listeners
Oh
about
yeah,
the
so sorry.
boundaries?
Hannah and I met. The way Hannah and I met is I wrote a play about the plague, particularly the outbreak of the plague in the 1640s in Lancashire and Derbyshire. And even that, in like, so
Sorry,
even in,
backtrack. What did you do to my character?
she got stoned to death for having the plague.
Yep.
She did.
And now we're
Um,
best friends. Tell me how that works.
yeah, but the treatments had really not changed
Hmm.
between 1593 and the mid 1600s, or even the late 1600s. You would still put salt on your windows. It was still considered a good idea to find a toad and tie him to the buboes, or
There wasn't a
uh,
toad in the film.
there was no toad. I think they thought it would be too
No toad.
unbelievable, but it was a real for 100 years, for more than 100 years. This was medicine,
I
and
don't
so
think
I
this was a
think.
film for history nerds like yourself.
No, but I think what it means is like our modern reading is that we read anti-Christianity into what we see visually on the screen.
Yeah.
There's an element of that, but it's much more nuanced
Hmm.
in the book, which
Hmm.
is that, yes, for a lot of people in that day and time, these two things were coexisting. What we perceive to be paganism, anti-Christian sentiments, using herbs, like thinking of like nature, being able to see or foresee things.
Hmm.
We think of those as anti-Christian things. Magic, we'll put that in the magic category.
Yeah.
But in 1596, magic and Christianity are interwoven together,
Hmm.
and they haven't yet been separated out. And that's a really hard thing to convincingly portray to a modern eye on the screen.
Yeah.
So when I left the cinema, I was like, I'm reading all of these visual clues that today align to witch. And they didn't align the same way in
Yeah.
1596. And that's something that I really appreciate about the book, is she shows the nuance of that balance, how it
Hmm.
really was like a balancing act. So a woman who birthed all your babies and cured your husband's cough and did all of those things
Yeah.
could, on a terribly bad day, the town could turn against her and call her a witch.
Mm.
And, maybe they might get away with burning her, or maybe they'll put her in the stocks for a couple of days and throw cabbages at her head. I think that's something that Maggie O'Farrell deals with really well. It's not something that I think was convincingly picked up in the movie, but I don't know how you would do it.
Yeah.
That's the end of my I don't know how you could create this historical moment. It's so hard to do visually and convincingly, because we are so entrenched in our idea of what these things mean. Like, the symbology is too strict. People
Mm.
think it's church or magic. People think it's Protestant or Catholic. People think it's Shakespeare was a pagan or he was a reformer, and it's just too nuanced, and I don't know how you would do it. But I did want it. I
Yeah.
don't know how they would do it, but I did want it.
That's fair. And another thing that I don't know how they would do, but I did want it, was what I would consider one of the greatest pieces of writing from this book, and it is how the flea carries the pestilence.
Mm,
I just think it's masterfully done by Maggie O'Farrell.
yeah, I think that would have been very hard to do without. Do you know? So we've been recently been rewatching House, the TV show. This is
Yes.
a wild segue, but we'll get there.
I'm
And
like,
one of the things it was like, one of the first TV shows that it did is it would do that thing where it like zoomed inside the person's body,
oh,
and it's like the
okay.
one blood vessel.
Yeah.
It's following like that blood vessel that then clots, and then the person's seizing.
Right, okay.
I think, how would you do that without having like the zoom in on the flea,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would have been very visually. They did that little the little puppet show moment. That was that.
Yes. I had forgotten about that. Yeah, okay. But I don't know if it would have kind of been not comical, but like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Bit absurd.
Yeah, I think it would have probably lent into that if they had have shown that. But I do think in the book it is such a great piece of writing. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole book is amazing. I hope I've made that clear. But I just think like I couldn't stop thinking about that particular section. I just thought it was
Mm.
amazing. Another thing that was in the book, but wasn't it was in the film, but not. We didn't get the sort of. I'm just going to explain. In the book, their first sex scene, our focus is placed on the apples and the movement of the apples and
Mm.
on the hawk, which I don't think is called a hawk in the book, but is called a hawk in the film.
Mm.
Is it called like a
I thought it was just called her bird. Like it's a bird. They conversationally they come to you
I'm
understand that it's a bird of prey, but I thought it was just her bird.
I could be wrong. But yeah, the sex scene in the film, we see them doing the act, but we don't really see
Mm.
that in the film. We see it, but in the book, we obviously our focus is placed elsewhere. And I
Although
just
the
think
apples are there. I remember the apples bit
the
because
apples
in
were
the
there in the
yeah,
film.
yeah.
Yeah, they were. But I just think it's really interesting seeing how each sort of artist puts their focus elsewhere. So
Mm.
Maggie put our focus on the apples and on the bird in that space during that moment, whereas Chloe Zhao was more interested in like their intimacy. And we come
Mm.
to their intimacy much quicker because, we get to their first meeting much quicker. And, they have this moment where they kiss quite quickly and she does holding the section between his thumb and, is that your
Mm.
forefinger?
Yeah.
She holds that section there, and then obviously after a little while we then have the sex scene, and it's I don't know, it just wasn't. I didn't know how that would translate to screen, but I do think that Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley do have an incredible chemistry.
Yeah, I really liked the bit where he comes and says he wants to be handfasted to her and he just walks around her in
Yes, and
circles.
the constant
I
movement.
really liked that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it like really it spoke to something that is captured in this book, that the sense that he already has a frenetic energy that needs to be
yeah,
expended,
yeah.
and she quickly realizes that in order to keep him happy, he needs to be elsewhere, and I liked that.
And I do think the book has a particular pace and energy to it
Yeah,
that I didn't know
I
how they would get on screen, because I feel like in the book we get a bigger sense of this place they're living in and the people around them, in the village or the
in
town.
Stratford, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think something she does a brilliant job, and it's something that I really respect in historical fiction writers who bring us abruptly into the world in which you are exploring
hmm,
without losing the character of that time period.
yeah,
What I mean, I guess, is that in the craft, in the way that she uses present tense narrative,
hmm,
third person present tense, really gives the reader a sense of living in the moment,
hmm,
but she doesn't lose the texture of the world itself or make it too modern. And this is
yeah,
something that Hilary Mantel does beautifully. It's also something Joe Harkin does really well. And I really enjoy that in her writing. And yeah, it's something that really lends itself to the exploration of the internal mind, the minute by minute experiences of living in somebody's body.
mm,
And she really gives us a wealth of that with all of her characters, and I can see how that is a challenge to them bring onto the screen.
yeah,
I think for me, the thing is always going to be child actors. I think it's a really hard gig. I think it's a hard job
hmm,
to get children to play convincing historical children
yeah,
without seeming drama, without pulling you out of the narrative to the point that you go, oh, they're doing quite well for
mm,
a 10-year-old, or you go, oh, I bet they've been to drama school, or maybe they
mm,
haven't, getting to that point of like natural ease,
yeah,
especially with the adults that they're working with, means that sometimes you do get a little bit of like a historical sacrifice. And usually I've noticed this in historical adaptations, particularly around children's scenes, is that what the director or somebody, I presume the director has done, is just kind of gone, just pretend like it's just normal, like these in-scene moments where they're playing in the garden, or they're planting, or the scene where Jessie Buckley is teaching them how to plant things.
Yeah.
She's describing it, what she's doing, like, oh, you just need to pat down the grass. But she uses the word okay, and the children use the word okay back. And okay is not a historical word, didn't kind of exist.
Did you shiver when you heard it?
It takes me out of the moment, but I
Okay.
understand how it happens, and I find it very common in historical adaptations that include children. So it's not the first time I've seen it, but what it always tells me is that this is probably an unscripted moment.
Yeah.
They're trying to capture the essence of this kind of family and show us that these children are really connected to these
Yeah.
actors. But it always pulls me out of it because I'm not in the past anymore. That word wouldn't have been used. And that's what makes it so hard with kids. But
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite behind the scenes anecdotes that I thought the family's chemistry, those actors as a family, their chemistry was amazing. And one of my favorite behind the scenes anecdotes was that they had rehearsed, when they show their mum the play that they'd been working on, they'd rehearsed that separately, and Jessie Buckley had no idea that they were going to do that. So she was led outside with him covering her eyes and them doing all of that, and she had no idea what they were going to show her. So her reaction on screen is like her real reaction, which I just thought was so beautiful. I do think the kids did a really good job, but yeah, I understand that those types of historical inaccuracies might pull you out of it.
I think some of their best moments were, I liked the moment when they did the funeral for the bird. A lot
Oh
of
my
their
God, the bird!
I think a lot of their best moments were moments where I'm not being brutal, but where they had like minimal lines.
Yeah, okay.
And they were kind of, I do think the little boy who played Hamnet
Hmm.
was very natural for the most
Yeah,
part, apart from the parts that we already talked about with like him having to see death and things like that. That's maybe
yeah.
a little bit too much to ask of someone I presume can't be more than 12 or 13 years old.
It's very
I
young.
mean, he's very young. Yeah.
The bird, you just made me think of the sound they do for the bird,
Yeah.
and they blow it up and look up, and the repetition of that. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. I mean, we've already probably spoiled all of it, but
Yeah.
that particular repetition of that sound is so beautifully done.
Yeah.
I do think though the casting was great.
Did I think the casting was great?
I
I
can't
think kids,
believe that you don't
I
know
think
if you think that.
I thought Jessie Buckley was superb.
Yeah.
I think William Shakespeare is such a hard character to cast. And
I mean, Maggie
um
O'Farrell has said in an interview that she
yeah,
always wanted him to be William Shakespeare.
yeah. The thing is, in the book, he is kind of an asshole. Like he's an asshole to the people around him. He has a lot of anger, and
I did get that in the book though, in the film. When
I
he's
didn't
going
get
to
it so
when
much.
he announces that he's leaving, like not long after Hamlet's death, I was like, you
Mm,
piece of shit. Like I thought that was really like well portrayed because there was nothing on his, he didn't seem like he felt guilty about having to do that. He was just like, oh well, they need me. And I do think that moment with them when they literally are wrestling
yeah.
is was really well translated to screen.
I think the trouble, like Paul Mescal, I really respect as an actor. I'm not obsessed with him like you are, but nobody could be. Um, you love him. You adore him. I think it's he has a very there is something about Paul Mescal's eyes that
Mm.
speak to like a softness and a sadness.
Hmm.
He's very good at like playing characters who have got like deep sads. And
Lots of deep
with
sads.
yeah, and for me, Maggie O'Farrell's Shakespeare
Hmm.
is not a deep sads character, but a deep rage character.
Fair. Okay.
And so it was just, we're talking about that moment where they wrestle. For me, he just seemed heartbroken. Like
Okay.
he was fighting her, but he seemed heartbroken. Whereas in the book, there were lots of moments where like he just wants to rage at people.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was always on the brink of tears.
Hmm.
So it's not that he did a bad job. I thought his performance was lovely. He just wasn't, this is just a subjective thing, isn't it? It's just how one person reads a book and interprets a
Yeah.
character. And I'm being very specific about her Shakespeare, right?
Yeah.
Because like Shakespeare is so broad. For the many, many Shakespeares that have been put to film or TV, I enjoy him tremendously.
Hmm.
I think he is top notch. I think he is, and I've seen a lot of Shakespeare's on TV, and I really enjoyed his. But for an adaptation of the character that I perceived in the book, I felt like he just missed the mark a little bit. I think kids are always really hard to cast.
Yeah.
I think the fact that Hamnet and Judith in the movie do not look anything like each other was a choice.
Yeah.
Because it's really interesting because in the book, the whole point is they're
So alike.
identical.
Yeah.
They're identical twins as much as, well, they can't be identical because they're different, different
They look
sexes,
so
but
similar.
they,
Yeah.
yeah, they look really similar. And that's the whole point of the book. Whereas in the movie, they kind of played it as, oh, they think they look similar. And we go along with it and we play that
Yeah.
they can't be told apart, but we obviously can tell them apart.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, they actually can't be told apart. And even after they've swapped places, after Hamlet has taken Judith's place on the pallet, when Agnes wakes up and realizes she believes that Hamlet is Judith.
Yeah.
And it's only when she sees ink on his fingers, on her fingers, she's like, why would Judith have ink on her fingers? And realizes. So it's a very convincing thing in the book, and it's played as kind of a joke,
Yeah.
a sad joke in the movie, that Hamnet believes that he can take Judith's place,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he's convinced his family. But really, in the movie, we have this scene where, Susanna is saying, how long do we pretend that they look
Mm.
like each other,
Yeah.
So that was a casting choice that I did not understand at all.
Did you know that the actor that plays Hamlet in the end section of the film is Noah Jupe, who is in real life Jacoby Jupe, who plays Hamlet's brother?
Oh, that's a nice little thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we have been talking for so long, but I really feel like we should mention the fact of that play and how at the end of the book we don't really get as much of the play, but on screen we do see
Yeah.
quite a lot of it.
We
What were your
see so
feelings
much.
around that?
I mean, I love anything where I get to see what would be, and
Hmm.
1596 would still be the Rose, I think, theatre. I love anything when I get to do that, because I just like to sit in front of it and be like, where did they shoot this? Did they shoot this at Stratford? Did they shoot this
Yeah,
at
they
London?
did.
Where
They
theatre
they
did they shoot it in?
shot it out the globe.
Yes, I think so I'm just looking at the end of the book right now, and I think the thing that we get in the movie, which is more, and perhaps, I mean, we were broken by this point,
We
um,
were not
but with
doing well.
retrospect, perhaps like a touch extra sentimental than made sense
Okay.
necessarily. But so at the end of the book, shall I just read like the last
Yeah.
line of the book? The ghost turns his head towards her, Hamlet, as he prepares to exit the scene. He is looking straight at her, meeting her gaze as he speaks his final words, remember me. That's like the last line of the book.
Hmm.
So that is Hamlet having died, leaving the stage, right?
Yeah.
And the movie is different, we'll say that. And Jessie Buckley is a lot more involved. So she's not just like seeing who she perceives to be her son on stage, but she
Yeah.
is interacting with him as well, which I didn't really have a problem with, because it is
Yeah.
mentioned in the book that she reaches towards him.
Hmm.
So, and audience interaction was a thing at that time. The audience was right there, so people did interact with the audience. I did,
But
oh,
also in
like,
the book, her brother doesn't come in with her, and all the stuff is internal. All of
it is internal, yes.
and they needed a
Um,
way to. They had
Yeah,
to
and I
bring him
didn't
in.
I didn't mind that, because Elizabethan audiences were loud and shouty. The idea that people were very quiet for performances is just ridiculous.
Hmm.
The thing that I was weeping at the time,
Hmm.
but in retrospect, I was like, it was the point where it pushed me from like, oh, this is really sad, into a little bit like I didn't necessarily believe it as much, was when she reaches for him on the stage. And that's very moving, because she gets to touch him,
Hmm.
and he is kind of connecting with her and giving us that moment that we get in the book of that feeling of connection.
Yeah.
Then everybody else in the audience reaches out a hand towards him, as if they're doing some kind of like, and it is like a mega church prayer moment, essentially,
Yeah.
what mega church congregations do. I found that to be unconvincing
Fair.
for an Elizabethan crowd to be so equivocally universally responsive. I found that an interesting thing, without any they were, for like prompting, if it was prompted. In this pantomime and the Elizabethan theatre have a lot in common, basically. So like, the villain comes on stage and everybody would be like, boo, somebody gets slain and everyone would be like, yeah. So they were responsive unilaterally, but this idea that because she has touched him, everybody wants to touch, like
Yeah.
it didn't translate as a
Yeah.
real
Yeah,
moment to
I
me.
do think it would have been more effective if it had just been her hand that reached out, but I still cried all the same. So
I know. I mean, the score was like really working.
yes, yes, we do need
They
to give a shout out. It was Max Richter, Richter,
Max Richter,
Richter,
yeah,
Richter, yeah.
Richter.
Beautiful, beautiful
It was
soundtrack.
really,
Yeah.
it was really, when you like come out of the movie and you start thinking about it a little bit and
Hmm.
you're like, was I sad or was the music just really sad? And that is a real thing for me because I'm very affected by soundtracks.
Hmm.
And when I examined the whole movie and the pieces where I cried, I was like, the very end with the reaching out of hands, that was soundtrack.
Mm.
The bit where he actually dies, that was the poor performances of Jesse Buckley. Like that was not soundtrack. So
Yeah.
there were moments where I think the performance genuinely moved me, and there were moments where the collusion of like the imagery with the music produced something
Yeah.
inside of me that was maybe a little bit more made. I don't know, but yeah.
So on this occasion, what are your overall thoughts?
Overall thoughts. As an adaptation,
Hmm.
I think we should do is two separate things. So like as a
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was beautiful. There were some gorgeous shots. I think
Yeah.
Jessie Buckley deserves to win something.
An Oscar. Give her an
Um,
Oscar. I mean, she has won something. She won,
yeah,
I think she won Golden Globe for Best
yeah.
Actress, but I could be wrong.
The costumes were lovely.
Yeah.
The real sense of like the lived world was
Hmm.
gorgeous. And I think the pace was right as well.
Yeah.
It felt like it was all working at the correct time and place.
Hmm.
If maybe a little bit weak on the back end rather than I think it was stronger at the front
Okay.
than at the back. And yeah, all really working. As an adaptation, there I can really appreciate what they did in
Yeah.
terms of the script and bringing parts of the story alive that I really
Hmm.
liked. I think they fell short in being able to conjure the spirituality, the unique spirituality of the Elizabethan mind, which was a mesh of old law and the superstitions of Catholicism and the broadening of the new church.
Basically, Emma wants to be brought on set as historical expert
I
and be
think it's a
like,
really it's a
guys, let me do
really
your
hard
research
thing
for
to
you,
do.
please.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I do think it is possible because I think it's done beautifully in Wolf Hall, which is and Cromwell is a very Protestant man and is living in a very Protestant household, but he still sees his wife after she's dead and he still sees his daughter.
Hmm.
And that's never explained, but that is like part of the innate spirituality of the Elizabethan mindset that is at once Christian and magical. And I think this lent a little bit too hard on magical to the point of her being like, I won't go to church. That was wildly unrealistic because to
Yeah.
not go to church was to end up in prison. It was
Okay.
illegal. So that was an interesting choice, and I'm not sure why it was made. Yeah. We know, for instance, that Shakespeare's father was like fined for not attending church. So we know
Right.
that it's a
Okay.
political issue that would have been very close to their family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are my thoughts. Those are the things I liked. Those are the things I didn't like. I think it's a gorgeous book and I think it's a gorgeous movie.
Yeah.
And I think both should be appreciated for what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. And give Jessie Buckley all the awards. I think she's
Yeah. And
magic.
I did wonder as well when I was watching the Little Hamnet. I was like, what fun to potentially see someone who might go on to be a big deal one day. You never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
You never know what someone's career is going to do and what
Hmm.
it would be really nice to think that, his career, he's going to have a long career ahead of him full of other Shakespeare adaptations and other Shakespeare. And in 10 years, we might be watching him play Hamlet. Like, I think that was fun.
Definitely. Thank you so much for doing the first episode of Books to Screen.
You're so welcome.
I loved, as much as we were sobbing in the cinema, I loved watching Hamnet with you. And I did
Yeah.
really, really love this book. I think it's beautiful. Before we go, this is your time to shine. We've elevated Maggie O'Farrell's wonderful book, but you have written some wonderful books yourself. So would you like to
Yes.
plug away?
Yeah, for those who are reading and loving Hamnet and are listening because you are a Hamnet person, please pick up a copy of my book, The Quick and the Dead by Emma Hinds, which is
I love that you
set in
clarified who it's by. It's you.
it's by me and is set a year after Hamnet. So it's set in 1597. It's set in the world of the playhouses and of alchemy and science and magic. And if you are a historical fiction nerd and you would like to spend more time in this world, then I think you would really enjoy The Quick and the Dead. If you're a historical fiction nerd, but you like it when they have more amenities like hot water and maybe some electricity. You might like my book, The Knowing, which is set in the 19th century and is about tarot cards and magic.
The Knowing is also a great book if you like to really get into the sads and feel those feelings of grief and loss that we've really felt in Hamnet.
But there is also a victory in The Knowing.
There is. It's
Hard
not all sad
won.
and gloom,
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful.
So
And sorry.
For those of you who are listening but are kind of like, historical fiction, not really my bag. I really like contemporary stuff. Well, lucky for you, I do that too. I have a young adult novel, which is also suitable for adults
Suitable for everybody.
who love contemporary fantasy, called Witch Law, which is set in Manchester and is about queer witches running around Manchester. And I have coming next year, soon to be available for pre-orders, Night Curse, which is another queer magical fantasy YA. This year. Oh my goodness, we're in a new year.
It's 2026.
It's 2026. Yes, October this year. Available for pre-order, I believe, soon.
Great.
So, yeah, those are all the books.
Links to all of Emma's books will be in the show notes. I will check if pre-order is available for Night Curse. Also, I think I can access the pre-order link last time I checked for US listeners, but I'm not sure about UK just yet. But we will keep them updated on that. I will be sharing on Instagram to keep you all updated on all of Emma's books because I am Emma's #1 fan. But thank you so much for coming on and doing this first episode with me. I've loved it and I love you very much.
Yeah, I love you too.
Mom, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say I've thought of a book adaptation I hate.
Oh my God. Go on quickly. What is it?
I'm sorry, but it is the adaptation of One Day that was made into a movie with Anne Hathaway.
So fair. The series was better, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I love that book. I love it so much. And it's a torturous movie. The like grey wig that they give Dexter when he's like an old man is just appalling. And yeah, it's just like it makes me sad. And yeah, I still do find myself watching it occasionally because I do think the soundtrack was peak. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
I can't believe you remembered that. That is all we've got time for. Thank you so much, listeners, for listening. Thank you, Emma, for joining me. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. You can follow Emma.
Yes, at Elf Reads, ELPH Reads on Instagram and at Elfie, ELPH13 on Tumblr.
And also you have a Patreon yourself.
Oh yeah, I also have a Patreon, Emma Louise Writes, where I talk about being a writer and also a lot about the fanfic community, which I'm part of. And yeah, love to see you on the socials. Come and say hi.
Go and say hi to Em. And also you can find extra content from us via Patreon, which is patreon.com/pairofbookends. And if you want to give me a follow, you can do so at pairofbookendspod on Instagram and at pairofbookends on Twitter and TikTok. Thank you so much for listening. Come tell us your thoughts on Hamnet and goodbye.
Bye-bye.